All right, it's Alexander Lawrence, the Portable Infinite, and today we usually talk about writers or music and stuff, but I mean, a lot of these people are artists and stuff, and too, some of these people paint. So, but we have a real artist, probably like one of my favorite LA artists, definitely Anthony Ausgang. He's born in '59. He's in Trinidad and Tobago. He works in Los Angeles. He's a painter associated with the lowbrow art movement and first major wave of lowbrow artists. I mean, lowbrow, it kind of, that could be taken a lot of different ways. It could be like, it kind of like, it's a little bit like pop art. It's a little bit psychedelic. It's comes from car culture, kind of a meshing of high and low culture, making no distinctions whatsoever. And we'll be talking a little bit about that. And the protagonists of his paintings are cats. I kind of see the cats, as just, I mean, they're kind of like humans too, right? You think, and Anthony, did we go out there? Okay, well, and he just mentioned he went to Art Institute. Like a few people I've interviewed went there and stuff. So he's been here in the since the '80s. What did the art scene in LA in the '80s look like? It seemed like it was kind of in its early days back then. What was it like for you? Oh, you got to turn on your sound.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, well, I was really excited because I was coming from a place where there was really no art scene at all, which was Austin, Texas. So, going to see the art shows around town, it was really exciting, but I kind of realized I wasn't able to see work that I liked, the kind of underground art, things like that. So I had to find places other than galleries to go to, which were after hour clubs like the 01 thing and places like that. So once I figured out that there were actually two art scenes going on in LA, one of them was the official art world, showing Billy Al Bankston and, Warhol prints. And then there was the other side of it, which was artists like Robert Williams, underground comic artists and things like that. So that was once I figured out there was two levels of art world, it started getting a little bit better.
It probably made a lot more sense. I mean, back then, I mean, a lot of the people were either from Otis or Cal Arts. I don't know when Cal Arts started up, but and then I went to Long Beach State, and there was a good art program there too. And I mean, like the artists in the '60s and '70s. I mean, there was a whole minimalist music movement with Larry Bell, Lita Albuquerque. Like
Yeah,
all that. Dan Flavin and like stuff like that was like a lot of the original shows I went to. I mean, Richard Serra, who I like now, because he just does these kind of warpy sculptures. I mean, I back then it was kind of weird, like kind of seeing that, and then I guess the Ferris Gallery was, and just the whole
yeah,
Warhol thing, the post Warhol thing, kind of went over from the '70s, but there was I don't think there was really like a major art scene until they got Mocha in '85, and then then there was this kind of, and then Dennis Hopper was somehow involved, and then there was like this big gallery explosion, like especially around Melrose and La Brea. It just seemed like
yeah,
in a couple of years there was like a few hundred galleries all of a sudden.
yeah, totally. At one time, all the galleries were on La Cienega, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, that was, yeah, and Earl McGrath. I remember going to Earl McGrath Gallery, and
yeah, yeah, Earl was great. I love that guy. That was Earl McGrath was like a really great thing. He didn't have to worry about money, so he could show anybody he wanted. I mean, the guy would totally blow sales because he didn't need money. I know for a fact at least one collector went in there to buy something and Earl just blew him off. He didn't need the money. He just wanted, he was having a good time.
So how do you?
So yeah, that was really cool. It was one thing that was seemed to make LA operate was having all the galleries close to one another. So that finally like solidified when they opened Bergamot Station. But that was much later.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, but I think Mocha in '85 was kind of a bit. I mean, I guess there was temporary, contemporary was slightly before that, and
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think. I mean, there was a Ferris Gallery in the '60s, but or even maybe the '50s, and but it was a lot of the artists that like you said, Billy L. Bankston, the other photographer guy, but John Baldessari, I guess, for instance. I mean, those guys all kind of had like a New York connection somehow. They were in LA,
Totally.
so yeah, and then we had like I mean, there was a couple, but let me get back to lowbrow art. I mean, lowbrow art kind of seems like you have like pop. There's pop art. There's like we used to have like black lights and psychedelic posters, and I mean that used to be kind of cool. And then there was like the whole rock world where there was poster art, and then the kind of the post there was even in that minimalist period there were still kind of pop artists. There were still Warhol and Lichtenstein were doing stuff, and then their whole kind of scene and stuff. And then I mean, at what point was that kind of connected to like I mean, I remember I liked because I was a big fan of Birthday Party, and Big Daddy Ed Roth did the cover of the '82 Junkyard
Yep.
record and stuff, and I definitely got that. And you used to go to art openings in LA in the '80s, and Robert Williams was there. Like, when did all that whole kind of coalesce? Like the Wacko used to be called Soapbox or something, or
Yeah, it's called the Soap Plant.
Soap Plant, right?
Yeah, yeah, La Luz. You know, it wasn't like the scene didn't really coalesce because you had the La Luz de Jesus, and then you had the 01, and they had totally different approaches to how they were going to sell this art. Pocono was in it for the drugs and the good times, and Billy was into it to actually try and sell art and move people's careers. Uh, I don't. I kind of feel like the lowbrow scene didn't really coalesce until this gallery called Bess Cutler moved out here, and that was in the early '90s. She came from New York. She opened a gallery in Santa Monica. She knew how to play the game correctly, and she went around and she picked up artists, did some headhunting, and I really feel the scene as far as lowbrow didn't really coalesce until she stepped in with her New York know-how and got it going.
Well, what about some other kind of people on the sidelines? Was like Ron Turner? There was Ron Turner of Last Gasp. There was I mean, there was R. Crumb from the Bay Area. There was that Long Gone John. I don't know what he did. He was like I used to hang out with him in the early '80s. He was kind of like this record collector guy, and then he later started his own label,
Yeah,
Sympathy for the Record.
yeah, yeah,
And then then we get to the '90s and we get Juxtaposed magazine, and they were kind of focusing on these guys that were somewhere between like cartoons and you know and high art and like design.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally. Juxtaposed when they first started had a real heavy connection to the underground comics because of Ron Turner and the San Francisco scene, Robert Williams. You know, so Juxtaposed really started out as a lowbrow magazine, but I can't really overemphasize the importance of Long Gone John because yeah, he collected art and he collected records, but once he got his own label going, he started using our art for album covers. And that got our imagery out all over the world. So, a gallery is a great thing, but fuck, man, it's just one place in one town. Whereas doing record covers got the word out all over the place. So John really had a lot to do with getting lowbrow sort of, out there for people who weren't in LA.
Yeah, because
And likewise, what once Juxtaposed started, that was also a way for people to start, like in Kankakee, learning what was going on in New York. I mean, this is all before the internet, obviously.
yeah, and I mean, it was like an educational system, like just reading pages. There was like a lot of artists nobody had even heard of. I mean, Long Gone John. I mean, I had met him in the early '80s. I mean, he was kind of this big record collector. I thought I had a lot of records. You know, I probably had 200 or 300 records. I went to John's house over there in Long Beach. He had like 10,000 records. You know, he just had
Yep.
like, you know, he knew he was a big Cramps fan. You know, he was really into retro. He probably had a bunch of 78s. You know, he was like, I was only like, I was like 19 and he was maybe like 35. It was like he seemed so old back then, but
Ah,
he was like super clued in. You know, like the thing
yeah.
that we all liked later. You know, Long John, because he was like a big you know, swap meet guy or whatever. You know, he was like out there early. That's what he did. I didn't know anything about him. I just thought it was a guy I would go to see the Cramps or Lord of the New Church, and John would be there, and I would be hanging out with him because my friend Jeff knew him and stuff, and we would hang out. I think we went to a Cramps or a Lords of the New Church show together, but he was definitely head of the curve.
Oh yeah, totally. He was the curve.
What about Zero X Gallery? I mean, was David? I remember David Lee Roth was sort of involved with that place a bit. How did that place start? It was right in the corner of Fairfax and Melrose there. I might have had a couple of different locations, but that's where I remember it.
Yeah, the one you're talking about was on La Brea and Melrose.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So John basically started his place as an after hours club, and he got around the liquor laws and so forth by having a private membership and saying, look, these are art openings, these are not, they're special and things like that. So he was able to get things going that way, which is really pretty bitching. But so John just kept things going for a while, but he didn't ever had that much money, so he always had to find somebody to put up the money. And at one time it was David Lee Roth, another time it was this film director David Blocker. So there was always this lineage of people who were putting up money to keep the place going.
Yeah. Did you ever have any association with Raven Pettibone? I remember watching him either put up a show or take down a show somewhere at that same, maybe even at 01 Gallery, because we went there during the day and he was like either putting up or taking down a show. Did you have a association with him back then?
Yeah, I ran into him a couple of times. He was, this was obviously before he became massively famous. So he was pretty available and he liked to hang out and, talk about things like that. But he didn't really, Pocono basically fucked everybody over at one time or another. So, he would sell work and wouldn't pay, or he'd make Xeroxes of stuff and sell them. And, it was just, he was always on a swindle. So Pettibone eventually just said, fuck off and went somewhere else. But yeah, it was really good to have people like Raymond Pettibone around for sure, because that created this really important link between the art we were making and popular music. You go to you go and you'd see Billy Al Bankston. Well, okay, he's entirely within the art world paradigm. Okay, but when you're dealing with lowbrow art, you suddenly music is involved, and other things that normally aren't involved in art, so to speak. So that, yeah, it was great. Black Flag, all that shit. It kind of
Yeah.
it brought the two scenes together.
Yeah, it's like I mean, a lot of yeah, I mean, like Lace I mean, I remember seeing Joanna Went really early on. I mean, there was kind of a connection to the post-punk scene and the art scene.
Totally.
A lot of the same characters, and I used to hang out at the cafe, Pick Me Up Cafe, because I knew Andrew Crane, who now works at the
Yeah.
film thing. And so like let's talk about some of the kind of rise and fall of the LA art scene. I mean, there was that mid 80s kind of thing where Mocha happened, the gallery explosion, Dennis Hopper, just all these collectors start showing up in LA. I mean, so that at that time, I mean, it seemed like we were, I kind of like wasn't even going to gigs. I was friends with Andy Takajian and then Steve Laponzi and David Al and a few others, Orange
Yeah,
County
yeah.
guys, and we'd go up and we would just go to like tons of parties and all these galleries. And I remember going to a Mark Gustavi opening at Tamara Bain Gallery in the mid '80s, and I
Oh,
got
no shit.
so Mark Gustavi, he was kind of like his own thing. He wasn't really like a lowbrow artist. How do you see him fitting into what we're talking about?
Yeah, well, there's certain artists like Kostabi that they kind of create their own scene. They become their own entity, you know. They don't need lowbrow. They don't really need even galleries like Tamara Bain. All of a sudden, that guy, he's his own thing. And that's cool. And I kind of it's like the DIY approach of punk rock, you know. And I think that was really important.
Yeah, so there was that '80s movement. I mean, um, out of that, kind of networking. I mean, Steve Ponzi ended up getting a show in San Francisco at this place Buster's. I helped get Andy a show at the Magic Theater at Fort Mason in San Francisco. But you know, Andy Takajan like struggled like all during that time, trying to get shows and stuff. But Steve Ponzi kind of hooked up with the Richard Green Gallery, I think, at some point. And at some point we became friends with Gronk at that time too. So we see
Yeah.
Gronk. And so like how long did that '80s mid '80s boom go on for? Because I think I had moved by '89. I had moved to San Francisco. Like, did it go on for but beyond the '80s, or how do you see it?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, God, I don't even really know how it all just kind of aggregated and once Robert Williams became, started selling to people like the Chili Peppers, when Anthony Kiedis bought the art, and Tamara Bain, which was, in Beverly Hills pretty much, when they just over the line. But once they started showing lowbrow, people really got interested in it. So I would think, there was this sort of aggregation of interested collectors with money and who were buying from galleries. Because, you can have an art movement. It doesn't mean shit if people aren't buying the art, and even though shows like that weren't getting reviewed, the word got around because Williams was selling his paintings for, 5 digits, and
Right.
that was unheard of.
Right. So I mean I think yeah, well, the Melrose La Brea explosion of like hundreds of galleries, I mean that kind of went on for a few years at least. I mean I just suppose it was like because most of those galleries are funded by one rich person or someone with a trust fund, and they after about 2 or 3 years, they just haven't sold enough paintings to keep it viable, or they're some of those ones go nonprofit or something, or there's like some way of keeping them afloat. So I think the expansion and then contraction was like an eventual thing that happens anywhere, even like in the downtown and it seemed like around 2000. I mean, there was that whole Chinatown gallery movement that happened for a couple years where everyone was like
Yeah.
moving to all those spaces in Chinatown. And I remember there was like gallery directors like showing up at just like little openings in Chinatown around 2000 or so. Did you have any connection with that whole Chinatown movement and like around the 2000 2001?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. Once all that started up, that was great because that whole area was basically a wasteland, and all of a sudden I think one of the universities opened, it might have been Cal Arts. They opened up artist studios there and
Yeah.
spaces. And yeah, that was really great because the rent was cheap and everything was cool. But one thing you got to really realize about the art world when you get into high ticket money, high ticket prices, is you're dealing with basically money laundering. So you know you got people with tons of money, they got illegally, and they want to launder it, they'll buy paintings for super massive amounts of money. Maybe, part of the the renaissance of the art galleries had to do with, like, everybody doing coke again. I don't know.
Yeah, it was like, yeah, it seemed like it goes every couple of years, and the Chinatown. I mean, the Chinatown. It also came with the popularity of the brewery. There used to be like like things over there, and then there was Matt Gleason, and Coagula magazine was going at that time, and
Absolutely, yeah.
he was writing about the scene, and then that Chinatown thing kind of came and went after, I don't know if it was 2 years or 5 years, and then there was like and then there was another downtown thing that started in 2004, which I was kind of closely linked with because I was involved with Rex Bruce and LACDA, the Digital Art Gallery, and Bert
Yeah.
was down there in the Hive, and so they had the downtown art walk from 2000. Mostly the good years were like 2004 to 2010,
Hmm.
and they like developers basically begged us to take over spaces that were empty and people were
Yeah.
doing drugs, and we didn't have to pay rent for many years, and
Yep.
just start a gallery here. We want to clean it up and make it more attractive for people to buy their lofts and stuff,
Yeah,
and
totally.
it seemed like if there wasn't a lot of laundering going on, there was at least they wanted make it or bring businesses and make people want to live there, possibly, because I think before 2004 people were pretty scared of going down to downtown LA unless they wanted to pick up some drugs.
Yeah, right. There you go.
And
Yeah, I don't really know. All of a sudden, like, art became popular with young people. It was almost like when you're talking about the early '80s, art was kind of the domain of these old fucking white-haired people, and who were just collectors. And all of a sudden, when I really think it was a big deal when Robert Williams did the Guns N' Roses cover, and then when he sold work to Anthony Kiedis, all of a sudden younger people were saying, you know what, art's pretty cool, actually. It's not just landscapes and portraits and single color canvases. It's art that's interesting.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah, I mean, so many people there. I mean, there was that whole music art kind of crossover. Frank Kozik, Mark Wright,
totally.
yourself, Robert Williams, Ed Roth. My friend Harvey Bennett Stafford did those Melvins covers where make them look like Kiss back in the
Yeah.
80s. And I mean, that was great because it helped the artists. They got paid for the artwork, and then helped it gave the musicians kind of art world credit. Like, oh yeah, we're kind of in line with that. Like, when did that kind of like crossover? When did you cross over to the music world? At what point? When did that happen?
Probably around the late '80s when I first met Long Gone John.
Oh, okay.
I did a show at a place because it was really difficult to find galleries other than like the La Luz and Zero and so I did a lot of shows in restaurants, and that's how I met Long Gone John. Was I did a show in Long Beach, and he showed up and liked what we saw.
Yeah, I mean, before the internet, as an artist, you want to get like you want to get like the widest audience, whether it's record covers or magazines or kind of installations or even performance art. I mean,
Yeah,
you're an artist, but you've also are a writer. You've written books. You've done like installations. You're maybe a performance artist. You want to get to the widest, hit as many people as possible,
totally.
and all that. What about your art? I mean, you use all these cats, but I still see it as kind of a human figure. But I mean, you always talk about how the human figure's already been done in a way. It's already, we don't need any of that stuff. And the figurative. I mean, I mean, who's a really good figurative painter, like since like Francisco Clemente, and it's almost like the humans barely there almost. I mean, there's not. I mean, I guess there's these people like um, the one. There's like people that kind of do drawings and stuff that are kind of interesting. But
Well,
you're
it was kind of a tactic in a way because I would go to these group shows and people would say, "Hey, which is your painting?" And you go, "Well, it's a fucking square one, it's a rectangular one." What the fuck? I mean, there's like that whole room is filled with them. So basically, it was a tactic on my part to say my painting is the one with the cats in it. And they go, "Oh, fuck, I remember that one." Or I would do round paintings because in a group show, they'd all be 90-degree angled paintings. And somebody say, "What's your painting?" I go, "It's the round one." "Oh, the round one." So that was a tactic to be discovered in a group show, to stand out in a group show. Because I wasn't getting solo shows. I
yeah
was doing group shows with all these other people, and you had to stand out some way.
yeah you have to
And that was my motif.
yeah you have to pop out. You have to. I mean, Joseph Boyce says like everyone's an artist, but it's hard to sell paintings if everyone's an artist. So, but if you but like in the early days of graffiti art, I mean, there was thousands of people doing that. But why do we only focus on Basquiat and Keith Haring and Kenny Sharp? Like these guys are plucked out of this thing, and they're elevated, because they basically just to sell and stuff, and you know,
Well, it's because they're from New York, and New York, until fairly recently, New York was the shit. That was where the big art town, just like once upon a time it was Paris, then it was New York, and I think it's LA now.
yeah,
And
well,
so it makes sense that they go, "Oh, it's Basquiat, it's Caring, and it's Kenny Sharp," because they're all New York boys.
yeah, but they didn't but they reduced the numbers though. They didn't like the door wasn't open for a lot of the other guys, that just for some of the other graffiti artists. They just kind of like did their thing and kind of disappeared. And these couple guys were kind of elevated and kind of promoted by the gallery system,
Yeah, totally.
as I was saying. But yeah, what else? Hmm,
But street art really, the big deal with street art was when Shepard Fairey got out of RISD and he started, the Andre the Giant stickers and all that shit. And he basically discovered this alternative information network that was putting stickers up on poles and newspaper machines. And it's incredibly effective because he could send the stickers, like he was in Rhode Island or on the East Coast, and he could send stickers to kids in LA, and they'd fucking put the stickers up all over town. Here, he didn't even have to come here. So I really think Shep had a lot to do with how the street art suddenly became the most meaningful art form for a lot of young kids.
yeah, it was like yeah, he was kind of using reproduction in a way where people can like have some art and share it and put it up everywhere, and he didn't even need the internet. He could just like send images around and
Yeah, totally.
just do it that way. I mean, so I mean, you've done some, so you Long Gone John, you did some, you kind of hooked up with him, but you're known for the MGMT record. I have it.
Yeah, that's the one. That saved my ass, man.
Here it is right here. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, that image saved my ass, dude.
It's big, and so you're kind of like, this is kind of like Shepard Fairey. So you go to any record store you can go to. This is like one of the most recognizable images for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And these guys, and then and you did that, and but you've done guitars and skateboards and all this other stuff too. Or how did you get into that?
Well, I was just looking for something other than paintings. to display my art. So it'd be a car or it'd be a skateboard, just something different. And it was a challenge. And I think the most important aspect of being an artist is challenging oneself. And yeah, you can paint on a 36 by 24 canvas. Pretty much figure out how to put a painting together, but painting on a skateboard or a car, holy shit, man, you got to figure everything out differently. So it's really challenging. And I liked painting on cars because that just blew people's minds.
Well, so the one it seemed like European exhibit. You had like I don't know if there were sculptures or there were like 3D printed images or how did the ones in the windows and stuff. How did you do that?
Which ones are you talking about?
I think it was in Italy, maybe. There were
Oh
like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there were like figures in a window and stuff. They were kind of like there was like images like this, but there were actual 3D
Yeah.
statue. Were those actual statues or were they 3D printed or how did you do those?
No, it's funny that those were probably the last sculptures that size that ever got hand carved. Like
Oh
they,
wow!
that was in Milan, Italy. They saw that album cover you just showed, and they were like, "We want you to do our Christmas windows," and they had pretty much an unlimited budget, and so I did my drawings for each one of them. They're called 360s. There's 6 drawings from the different angles, and I sent them off, and these guys were in the grand. They're in tour in Italy, and they're in the grand tradition of Italian sculptors. Man, they just hacked that stuff out of high density foam, and put fiberglass on them, and dude, that shit went off. They loved that
Yeah,
stuff, man.
yeah. I thought that was. I mean, I thought that was some of your best work, actually. I just thought, and it was like it was very. I mean, you know, I mean, how can anybody like look at that and like, oh, just stop? Like, what the fuck is it?
No, dude, that was so great because the Italians loved it, man. They have their picture taken next to them, and it was in the middle of Milan, and so there were thousands of people walking by these things every day, and it was great, man.
So, I mean, do you how much is it painting and how much you use computers or are you interested in using AI at all in your work?
Oh, that's interesting, man. You know, back in '94, I got my first computer, and I got this program called Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, and I was showing it to my artist friends, and they're like, "Oh fuck, dude, that's Satan. That's a tool of Satan. You can't do that. That's going to destroy art. That's going to destroy painting." All the things they're saying about AI, they said all that shit about computers. They said all that about Photoshop. But so I was like, holy shit, I don't have to go down to the photocopy store and stand and monopolize the machine for an hour sizing stuff up. I can do it at home with a computer. So I strictly use the computer for layout, maybe sometimes to figure out color combinations, but I tend to use Photoshop to design my paintings. As time went by and I got good at it, I could say people would say, "Oh, we want to use your painting XX for an album cover." So I'd be able to, once I digitized it, I could switch it around, I could change it, I could put the text on it. So I use the computer a lot, man, but I'm never gonna ever give up painting on canvas.
Well, just to remind everyone, you can look more information for Anthony Ausgang online, ausgangart.com. And let's see what else. What else do we got?
Yeah, Instagram.
Oh, yeah,
Instagram is Anthony Ausgang.
I'll put all those links in there. Yeah, what else was you gonna talk about here? I totally blanked out. I should have probably wrote this stuff down. But
No, that's cool, dude. It's just I find it really interesting that I got these friends of mine now who are like totally freaking out on AI.
yeah,
And I'm like, dude, you know, you can outsmart AI. People, I'm a step ahead of AI. I don't care, man. I'm doing stuff that AI hasn't thought of yet.
I think people use projectors like before that, and like, you know, did outlines and stuff. I mean, there's other ways of getting around it. I mean, not everybody like had like the drawing technique or whatever. You know, some people trace stuff with you know, projectors and stuff, projecting images up on the thing, on the canvas, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's not, you know, there was ways of getting around it. I mean, not everybody, you know, there's very few people that have like realistic, you know, I mean, I don't think that's in art anymore. Like, I mean,
Yeah, totally.
maybe
It's interesting because, like, Robert Williams was the king for a long time. He was the high bar to which all of us really, we wanted to get as good as Williams, and that was all cool until this guy Mark Ryden showed up and started. He was as good as Williams in a totally different way. And once he became popular and selling his work, that's when this new form of lowbrow called pop surrealism began, which was technically higher than lowbrow, but didn't, to me, have the same kind of imaginative force. Mark Ryden was an incredible illustrator, but most illustrators are illustrators because they can take direction from an art director. To be an artist, you got to come up with the concept yourself. So that was a big difference, I think. But Ryden definitely changed the equation.
Where are you gonna have any shows coming up like this year, or what are you doing like right now? What kind of work are you doing right now?
Yeah, I got a painting at this place called the GABA Gallery, and that's going to open up on the 17th. So I'm showing at different galleries. Basically, I'm selling online with Instagram through galleries and things like that. But dude, I I hope to hell that when I finally die, I have a canvas on my easel ready to go,
It seems
because
like,
I want to always, I am always going to be painting, dude. That's what it's all
yeah,
about.
yeah, it seems like you've been doing it like the whole time. It's like since you got here, you've been painting since like 1980. You've always been like steadily working on something. It seems like a lot of the art world has moved to these like art fairs. 'Cause I went to
Oh,
the Freeze a couple times, and
oh,
it seems like a lot of it's moving. Like a lot of guys, a lot of gallery dealers that I've known over the years, they don't even work out of gallery. They work out of their house, or they get a table at the
yeah,
LA Art or the Freeze or something, and they
totally.
sell just as many paintings at those things than they would a whole year of having a gallery and paying the rent. How do you feel about that?
Hey man, whatever works, I think if these people can pull that off without having a gallery space, that's okay with me. That's just how it is. It's just that's how it goes. But I never found at Freeze that there was any kind of I never saw any art dealer at Freeze that would be interested in what I was doing. You know,
Yeah, they already have.
Freeze has to do with the that level of the art world that I'm not part of.
Okay, well, I think we're running out of time here. So thanks for talking to me. Check out the artwork of Anthony Ausgang. We'll have the links in the description. Go to his shows, check it out, buy his art, buy a lot of it. Look at check out his books and all that. Well, we'll see you soon, and we'll talk again about the LA art world. We're gonna run out of time here.